In a place where the waves rise imposingly, a small version of Yo-woon desperately struggles to stay afloat. His arms flail clumsily as the water engulfs him, his voice breaking into a cry for help, pleading for someone to rescue him. He begs to be saved, as he does not know how to swim. The current mercilessly drags him, pushing him in different directions as his desperation increases. Each passing second feels eternal, and his pleas are lost in the sound of the raging sea. But suddenly, the scene dissolves. It was not real. Yo-woon was not in the water but submerged in his thoughts while preparing a drink. With a vacant stare, he stirs the liquid in the glass without even realizing it. It is then that his boss bursts into his reverie, calling his attention with an impatient tone. She asks if he has already prepared the 2 glasses of Blue Moon for customer 13. The young man blinks, abruptly returning to reality, and responds that he has not yet done so. His answer provokes a sigh of frustration from Yojo, who furrows her brow and questions him severely. She wants to know exactly what he is doing and why he is taking so long if he is supposed to be a beverage artisan. Ye-woon hurriedly apologizes and assures that he will prepare it immediately, but his boss snorts and orders him to leave it. She will handle it herself. Moreover, she tells him to take out the trash to clear his head a little. Before he can say anything else, she warns him that if he comes back and zones out again, she will punch him. Then, with a sharp look, she asks if he has understood. The young man quickly nods, apologizes once more, and leaves without daring to add anything else. Outside, after disposing of the trash in its proper place, he wonders why he has been so distracted all day. He also has to write his autobiography, but he has made no progress. He always ends up lost in his thoughts, unable to concentrate. It is then that he remembers that day, the day he saw Hayen with someone else, sharing physical contact that was too affectionate. He believes they must be dating. He remains silent for a few seconds, and gradually, his anger begins to grow. He cannot help but remember that she had told him she was not seeing anyone. Now he feels that once again, he was the only one being sincere. He relives every moment shared with Hayen, and his rage intensifies to the point that without thinking, he kicks the trash. Instantly, he realizes what he has done. He sighs, looks at the mess he made, and without saying anything, crouches down to pick up what he knocked. As he does, he reflects. He wonders if his anger truly comes from what others do, or if, deep down, it is his own heart that betrays him. After all, he had said that just seeing her and talking to her would make him happy. However, now he faces a desire he cannot ignore. He wants to have her only for himself. It was still nighttime, but somewhere else. More precisely, in the recording studio. Hayen was listening to a song when Sung Hyun-jae asked her what she thought of the new mix, mentioning that his engineer had worked on it all night based on the version she had made. The girl responded dismissively, saying it was fine and that it sounded good. Hyun-jae, noticing her attitude, mentioned that he had something he had made as a test and asked if she would like to listen to it. He explained that he had tried to highlight the long afternoon part, more to give it a different nuance. She, without much interest, replied that he could do whatever he wanted since she trusted his work. Even if she didn't say anything, she was sure he would do it well. He looked at her again and noticed something in her expression. After a few seconds of silence, he asked her to wait a moment. Then, in a more serious tone, he asked her not to act that way. He reminded her that no matter how she felt, the work had to be taken seriously. If music were just a hobby for her, he would understand. But this song carried the effort of many people. He mentioned the musicians from the Long Afternoon Band, the engineers, and the staff coordinating the project. Additionally, he warned her that if they did things halfway, all the effort of those who had helped them would be in vain. He asked her to stay focused until the end, as if they failed. The weight of that failure would fall on him. Hayen looked at him for a moment before lowering her gaze. Then, in a softer tone, she apologized, admitting that she was a little distracted. Hyunjae observed her with a bit more confidence. With a firm voice, he stated that she was right because those harsh words were what he would say as a producer in such a situation. However, this time he would ask a different question. He leaned in a little closer and, with a more personal tone, asked if something was wrong. He had noticed that throughout the day, her expression reflected concern. Hayen remained silent for a moment, reflecting before responding that it was nothing. However, as soon as she uttered those words, her mind betrayed her, and the memory of Yowon suddenly overwhelmed her. That image filled her with frustration and sadness, making her expression reflect those emotions. Finally, unable to contain herself any longer, she suddenly stood up and raised her voice with force, vehemently declaring that she was very angry. Hyunjae observed her in surprise, not fully understanding her reaction. His confusion grew when she, with a furrowed brow and an intense gaze, bitterly stated that she didn't understand people. Still confused, he asked what exactly she was trying to say. Hayen pressed her lips together before replying coldly. She explained that people were unreliable, that in front of her they insisted enthusiastically, like an eager puppy ready to go for a walk, but behind her back, they acted completely differently, revealing their true nature. Deep down, she wanted to believe that there was someone incapable of betraying her, but even as she expressed her thoughts, she realized she had no right to make that claim. She was aware of it. She understood, but even so, she couldn't help feeling that way. Hyunjae observed her carefully, and after thinking for a moment, advised her that when meeting someone, she shouldn't dive too deeply into that relationship, no matter who it was. Then, in a calm voice, he told her that other people's hearts were like the bottom of a river. Sometimes we think we know its depth, but in reality, we have no certainty. And if we jump into the water convinced that it's deep, but it turns out to be shallower than we imagined, the only one who will get hurt is ourselves. Hayen remained silent, absorbing his words. He continued speaking with the same calmness as before and explained that, for this reason, it was best to approach others with moderate trust and low expectations. When we expect too much, we end up creating a mistaken image of the other person, and that only leads to disappointment. Hyunjae's words resonated within her. She knew he was right. No matter how much she tried to cling to her expectations, reality would always prove that others would never act as she wanted. That uncertainty was what scared her. That's why she hid behind Yukon as a way to protect herself, to avoid getting hurt. But then her mind returned to Yowon. She wondered if, after all, what she really wanted was a superficial relationship without complications or risks. She clenched her fists, feeling frustration consume her. She was upset, angry at herself, at others, at everything. There were so many things she wanted to say, so many emotions boiling inside her, but in the end, the only thing she allowed herself to admit was an absurd thought. Because despite everything, she still wanted to see that stupid face. And so, at the subway, Yewon arrived and in front of him, he saw Han. He noticed that she was standing on the platform instead of sitting on the bench as usual. He thought that meant it was okay not to talk to her anymore, that he didn't have to approach or speak to her. He also thought it was because she had a boyfriend. With that idea in mind, he made a decision and walking past her thought it was fine, that there was no point in clinging pathetically to her. They wouldn't see each other anymore, so there was no reason to insist. However, just as he was about to walk away, he found himself face to face with her. With an expressionless face but a mask of indifference, she asked him to talk for a bit. Hayen looked at him with curiosity, and, in a serious tone, he didn't beat around the bush. He directly asked if she had a boyfriend. Hayen was surprised by the question and, somewhat confused, responded that she had already told him she didn't have a boyfriend. Still, Yewon insisted, he stated that he had seen her walking with a man, his arm over her shoulders. He looked at her intently and asked if that man wasn't her boyfriend. Hayen recalled that day and without hesitation responded that it was probably her uncle. Yewoon looked at her with a mix of mockery and disbelief. He questioned whether she really thought he would buy that excuse, doubting she had such a young uncle. Ask again if he is telling the truth and if he thinks he is a fool. That angers Hayen, who without thinking throws the question back at him. She wants to know if he has a girlfriend since last time she saw a woman walking arm in arm with him. Yewoon also remembers that day. He explains that it was probably a coworker. But Hayen is not convinced. With an accusatory tone, she comments that it seems like he walks arm in arm with any woman he knows. Then, with a hint of irony, she asks if he thinks he is the lead singer of the Rolling Stones. He sighs and shakes his head. He tells her that she was the one who took his arm on her own. Hayen crosses her arms and challenges him with her gaze. She asks if going out alone on a date was also something she did on her own. Yewoon denies it again. He responds that it was not a date, but a company dinner. But Hayen does not give up. She tells him that no one calls a solo outing a company dinner. Yewoon insists that it was not like that. He explains that originally the boss was there. As the discussion progresses, they both start arguing. In the end, Hayen sighs and decides to put an end to the conversation. She says it's fine, that they should stop talking about it. After all, he does not believe her, so there is no point in continuing the argument. Looking at him wearily, she asks why they should keep talking about it if it is just a waste of time. Upon hearing those words, Yewoon feels his chest tighten. He remains silent for a moment until he finally murmurs that she is right. Then, in a lower voice, he asks if that is what she really thinks. He wants to know if she truly believes that all of this is a waste of time. Just at that moment, the train is arriving. Hayen looks at him seriously and responds that she did not mean it that way. Yewoon watches her for a few seconds and, in a firm tone, asks her to spend the night with him. Before she can react, he suddenly grabs her by the shoulders. He adds that he will prove to her that he is a sincere person. His words leave her confused, but what unsettles her the most is what he just said, because he said he is going to prove something. And with that, we've reached the end of this week's chapter. If you made it all the way to the end, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this chapter in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe so our community can keep growing and we can reach more fans like you. See you in the next video. In the meantime, if you're from the near future, I'll leave you the next chapter and a comic you're sure to enjoy. Thank you for being part of this adventure.